Good morning, and welcome to Haventree Parent Podcast, where we get a chance to talk about something that's important to us and to you before our kids wake up.
Today, you better be prepared for tears. We're going to be talking about the psychological and emotional impacts of childhood cancer on families.
All right, so like you said, today we're going to talk about the emotional and social aspects of just the stress and things that come along with having to deal with a diagnosis of cancer in your family and how that, has affected each of us and just the different aspects of amounts of stress that we have.
So I think, the first really obvious thing to talk about is the fact that it's taken us, 2 years and a couple months since she was diagnosed to really be able to talk about this. And I expect, like I said, there'll still be tears, but unfortunately there's been tears from one of us each episode. And it's so atypical. Like neither of us, I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've seen you cry in our marriage.
Right.
And, I am more prone to tears than that, but not by much.
That's only because I caused it. So.
Yeah. Not by much. So we both tend to be pretty stoic when it comes to that. So
right, we're usually like, let's figure out the problem. Let's not feel that yet. Let's feel that after we decide.
After we've come up with a solution, we can deal with the emotions. Right. But by then they're lessened because we have the solution.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I'll cry for 10 minutes. But sometimes you want that good cry. I don't know.
I don't. I hate crying.
I remember there was times when I wanted to just have a good cry, and I don't remember like how to
That's
achieve
so
that.
weird.
So I think people need that. So
I guess
it's healthy. It's healthy
true.
to cry.
So I think that is very relevant to point out, though, as we enter this conversation, that it, even being able to talk about it coherently, has taken 2 years for us.
Right. Yeah. Because technically we were supposed to start this whole podcast adventure like 2 years ago, but we are there now. So.
Like talking about or thinking about crying and, burbling incoherently. I recall shortly after Kenzie was diagnosed, I went and talked to like a counselor because I was very pregnant, very stressed. And, it was recommended by some of the oncology team and Josh. And so I went and talked to this counselor. God love her. She's the sweetest, it's like a Christian counselor. And I walked in and sat down and she was like, so what brings you in today? Let's get to know each other a little bit. And I just sat and sobbed for the first 20 minutes that I was there. I got 3 sentences out maybe, and it was just sort of like, my daughter has cancer, and I just couldn't, I don't know, the emotions were so intense and overwhelming. There was just nothing to say, and I don't think that I'm unique in that. I think that, it is kind of something that is pretty typical for a lot of parents.
And I think
with cancer.
No, I totally agree. I think that, when we first had the diagnosis and that first, few months or whatever, it was very hard to talk about any aspect of it because it was just I think I cried in the lobby with one of our friends that came to bring us a pizza, and just was like, thanks for the pizza, and exploded, because it was just, I don't know, it was
overwhelming. It's overwhelming.
She had just gone through whatever procedure, and it was I was still emotional from that, and probably had 2 hours of sleep or something, and so it was a rough night.
Yeah, there's no words to really express what it is that you're
and the word that
feeling.
I did keep coming up with that I would tell people, I was like, we're broken by this. It broke us because it was, as we said in the first part of this episode or series, it was unexpected. So it wasn't anything we were looking for, and then to have that happen, it just broke us. So that's the best way I have found a word for it.
Yeah.
So
and the same with when she went back to get her port put in. That was a really hard day. I think more so for you than for me.
Oh man, yeah, that's probably the most emotional I've been in this whole course.
You know,
other than when people like want to access the port and fail, and then I want
that's hard.
and then I have like anger at them. But that's not emotional tears, but
yeah, but it's still an emotion though. Anger is an emotion too.
Right.
That day, that was difficult. You know, as we took her back, did the whole like pre-op surgery thing, and I don't know. I just remember them like when it was time to like say goodbye, and them wheeling her back in that big bed, you know, and she just was so tiny. She was 2, and you know, she had been fevering for days, and it had been a rough couple of days, and you know, they wheeled her back away from us, and the doors closed, and it was hard, you know.
Yeah.
It was
that was my broken moment for sure. Like
Yeah.
I was already, like I said in the first one, fighting the whole like this is her diagnosis, and like I wanted to go, you know, just give me the boot, and we'll go get another look at this blood work, and we'll try to figure out if that's actually what
Josh was still firmly in denial.
Yeah, I was still in denial. So like just to see her like wheeled away and like going to knowing what they had explained for like probably 2 days at that point. Like, this is what's going to happen. We're going to put this port in. It connects to her heart, or it goes into her aorta, and like it'll just like let us access and give her medicines, and that's the best way to go versus putting an IV in every time or some PICC line thing, and just other medical stuff that you don't want to have to deal with a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So it was like this is the best way for a kid to get all of their medicine and just not have a big issue of veins and IV work and all that.
Yeah.
But it was still like she's going in for this like basically a heart surgery.
Almost.
To have this port added into her
Little
blood
body.
system. Yeah. And it's just like just the thought of like that level of surgery for her at 2, it destroyed any sort of like stoicism that I had at the moment. So I was totally in my own like I don't know, fear moment of whatever that emotion was. I was just, I think I got like, somebody was trying to like, look, come this way, follow me out to the waiting area. And I was like, I just want to go into this dark room over here.
Yeah.
And
Josh,
I just need like 30 minutes to like try this out. Cause
Josh like made a beeline for the bathroom. Thankfully I still had my friend with me. He just left.
I was like, I can do nothing. I can talk to nobody. Like
Be
if
like-
I look at anybody in the face right now and anybody asks me how I am, I'm just going to drop everything.
Yeah. So he just like made a beeline for the bathroom.
Yeah, I think I like stood in the middle of the lobby and just cried because I was like, I don't know where to go right now. I don't want to leave because my daughter's in there. I'm waiting for her. But it was like I needed a space just for me at that
Just
point.
for a
Like,
minute,
where's those safe spaces people are talking about? Because I need one of those. Please have that quickly available. So it was definitely that was the hardest day.
Yeah.
Like I said, other than the days when people have messed up
There have been other
accessing the port.
Yeah,
that they put
there have been
in.
other difficult days, but that I think was one of the early, like worst, most difficult days
Yeah, I think
emotionally.
it was like at that level, I had to accept everything that was going on.
Yeah, like this is really real. Like your kid really has this. We're really, putting in this port. This is really happening. And then just to see, like her wheeled away and just to feel so helpless and to, rely on the people that you can't see to take care of her while you can't be with her when she's so fragile.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think she was asleep before she left. So it wasn't like we like separated and she was like crying for
Well,
us.
yeah. So they, Kenzie does not respond well to Versed, which is what they usually give when they take her back before she's asleep. And so she was angrily trying to stay awake. And I just remember her little head and they were like, it's okay, just relax, and she would not relax. She was like angrily trying to stay sitting up, sucking her thumb, holding her monkey, like, I will not fall asleep. And even that, like, then you feel badly about that too, because it's like this, like now she's confused and upset, and I don't want them to take her away from me right this second, even though I understand, that this needs to happen or whatever.
Well, that's the other one of the things to talk about, that we have on our list or whatever, is just talk about like her own
which is a whole
anxiety and stress that we can't even understand at this point because she doesn't really understand it herself to be able to explain, like, I feel anxious or stressed. Like, we don't know how she feels about these things. We just have done our best, and Katie's done an amazing job with helping her face all of these medications, and the doctor needs to just do this, and just a very good job of explaining. And hopefully that's because not only you're just a nurse, but you're a good mom and just way of explaining things to her. Because like I said, we follow other parents parent groups that have talked about their kid not doing well with medicines or not doing well with getting the poke and all that fun stuff that, Kenzie has to face.
We'll talk about that really specifically, though, in another podcast. We can
sorry.
get way off topic with that.
I'm just saying Katie's done a very good job of helping Kenzie to process what's going to happen, explaining it outright, and just saying, like, the doctor needs to do this to make sure you're going to get strong.
Yeah. And I think that something that is important to talk about related to that is that, as parents, there are really strong emotions. Many parents report symptoms of anxiety, depression, even symptoms that are very similar to PTSD following a child's cancer diagnosis. But in the midst of dealing with your own sort of psychological difficulties, you also have to be present and ready to address your child and be there to emotionally support your child. And I think it's something that's really important and really difficult. There are so many times I can think of, I think like after we had finished about the first year of treatment, where I just remember like driving to the hospital and just being like, I just don't want to do this anymore, and I don't want to hold her down for access. I don't want to, hold her while she cries today. Like, I don't want to hold the puke bucket while she inevitably pukes after chemo. I don't want to do it. I'm just done, and you have to then kind of like suck all that back up and, put a smile on your face when you're talking to your kid and, say like, I know that it's ouchy for a second, but then we'll be done and it'll be great, and, just be emotionally able to withstand your kid's emotions and sometimes feel like the bad guy, which sucks, I mean, it's just so difficult.
Right. No, and I appreciate that you took on obviously a majority of that. I think I got to take her to the hospital a total of maybe once by myself.
Once or twice, yeah.
So Katie definitely has absorbed all of the shock from each one of those days of just being there for every poke and everything that Kenzie has had to face.
Yeah.
And, I love you for that.
Thanks.
And doing all that because I know you were trying to keep my own emotional stress from, I don't know, just being too ratcheted up.
And that is a good point too, that in a lot of ways, part of my role in this dynamic has been to sort of be the buffer in some of that, where I, was in surgery while I was still in school. That was where I did my role transitions, because if I worked in a hospital, that's where I wanted to be. And so I understood a lot of those things. I knew a lot of those risks. I understood that, we had to sign the forms and the consents and do the, whatever complications are potential and blah, 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 and so I was familiar with that. And I knew that all of those things would be overwhelming. And so a lot of those things I did on my own, because I knew that they would be overwhelming for you and unnecessary, and so, I had to kind of balance like buffering some of those things and then also like keeping you in the loop about like the important things or the big things or, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. No. And I think my role, at least when I would go and be there for the long weekend stays or, a quick evening check or whatever, my role was just mostly like focus on what Kenzie was asking for and just needed. And while you were talking to the doctors and nurses about what was going to happen next. And I was like take care of Kenzie,
or give me a break for a second.
Yeah, do what she needs, run out to the car, grab whatever else we brought, and just be that extra hands-on support for that moment, but not really deal with the doctor face-to-face conversation and what the next medical stuff was going to be, because that you understood that language and that was easier for you to process to me, versus
give you the highlight reel and keep going.
Right, which was great, and I think it was good for Kenzie, because I think and this is something we can talk about probably later too, was just like when she would come home, or when we stopped doing those 3-day weekends, like we saw a real need from her, from like wanting to have just mom and dad time, and it was like, oh, okay, she misses that, because we weren't doing high level dose chemo anymore, so we didn't have to stay there for every weekend. Only other aspect that I'll say we're sort of nicely providing both sides of this, is that on those days that you would come home from a stressed day of, getting multiple pokes because one didn't go in well, or there was just, whatever medical procedures needed to happen but didn't, or weren't doing them quickly enough and taking your full day. I was here mentally preparing for them to just come home stressed and tired and beat, and just sort of making sure things were out of the way and done. So when they did get home, it wasn't like, hey, welcome to this mess of the life that is still going on here, because obviously the kids are still doing their school, doing their games and play. And so even though Kenzie was going through all of this treatment, they were still, we didn't want to change too much of their day for them. And so things were still happening here regularly. And so it was I didn't want her to walk into whatever other arguments, somebody broke my toy type of things. It was let mom just go and be, in a quiet space for her to regain whatever it was that you had expelled for the day.
So one of the things that I kind of noticed, and it took a while for me to be able to describe what I was experiencing, and actually it happened again when I had to take Opie for his stitches to the emergency room. But, because I worked really hard to be strong and optimistic and understanding when we were in the hospital, when we were in the midst of whatever that high pressure situation was for Kenzie, where I, had to be the support, I had to be present, I had to be, emotionally available to her. Then when we got home, when that was done, I had to take a little bit of time to sort of just feel all of that myself, almost, where I had to kind of just keep it locked down for her sake until it was done, but then it was all of that adrenaline or emotion that I hadn't dealt with yet. It took a couple hours sometimes for me to just come home and be I just need to read a book or stare at a wall or, whatever.
And that was what once I saw that, probably after the first 2 or 3 times, I was like, okay, I need to have a better plan on these days, because this day is when she comes home.
We're gonna have pizza or SpaghettiOs out of a can, because mom, may or may not be sitting almost comatose staring at a wall for a couple hours.
And then I'll catch up on my end of what I need emotionally later on. So
and I struggled with that for a while, because it was it felt frustrating that every time we came home from the hospital after one of those events, I just needed a little bit of time, and I think that's totally normal. I think it makes a lot of sense, given the circumstances, but it definitely was hard for me to not feel guilty about that at first, and so we had to kind of develop that rhythm of you've been, or I've been emotionally strong for Kenzie, so now I need a little bit of time to just take a bath and have a glass of wine or read a book or, throw some eggs at a tree or, whatever, to just kind of deal with the emotions that I haven't been able to address yet. But I do think that regardless, it is something that is important as parents to figure out how to deal with those emotions, and that is really why I went initially to talk to that counselors, because I was just there are so many emotions that I don't even want to let myself feel. I'm afraid to really let this be real, because I don't know, where I'm going to land emotionally, and it was just the I don't know, the overwhelmingness. I just was afraid that, I would drown in it or something. And so it is important, as parents to not let those things get overwhelming. And it's, easier said than done. When you get news like that your kid has cancer and you have to do these things and whatever, so much easier said than done, but it is important, whether that's talking to a counselor or talking to a pastor or talking to a friend or a family member that you trust. It is something that is important, and needs to happen, or, having a medication or whatever the case may be. Taking care of yourself so that you're able to be there to take care of your kid is important. And it's hard to do.
Right.
But it's necessary.
Yeah. And I think, all the things that we've mentioned so far have definitely, I think are giving a glimpse to that world of just the emotional aspect that comes in with all this. Obviously it's already emotional enough to just hear the words like your kid has cancer.
Yeah.
But also, the siblings and the other kids definitely
Yes.
have had to face different struggles as well. And
Yeah.
we saw some of those at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And it was hard because one of the first things I think while we sat in that initial weekend was just like, okay, well, we don't want this to affect everybody in the family.
But it's going to.
But it's going to.
Right.
We don't want it to affect what they have going on right now. And we'll just sort of like plan away sort of different things to try to maintain that. Like definitely one of the things that we haven't really brought back yet was like we used to try to do kid dates, right? Where we took them out and do a special thing with each one. Yeah. And I don't think we've done maybe more than one throughout the course of the treatment.
We've done a few here and there, but they've been so sporadic.
Yeah, just because it's harder to schedule that with everything else. So hopefully someday we'll bring those back when there's not, everything going on. But
one of the first things we saw though was Josiah had a really difficult time after Kenzie was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of anger and just like straight up rage. And we've talked before in podcasts, Josiah is a very, I say he has a personality like an old man, but he's a very routine oriented kid. He's a kid that lives by the rules. He's a kid that has a plan every single day. He is very, rule focused, routine focused.
And then that time when we were first,
everything went to heck.
Oh yeah, no, it was every 3 days was somebody new was watching them. So it was like you were watching them for 3 days, then your mom, then my mom, then me, then maybe a friend would jump in, and it was the rules weren't consistent because house rules are fluctuating depending on who's in charge of the home, right?
And then, it was today we should be home. Just kidding. Kenzie spiked fever. We're going to the emergency room. And then it was
right. Yeah, we're gonna drop you off at grandma's while I go take Kenzie to get her treatment. So
and then it was mom and dad are behaving weirdly because we're dealing with our own stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And he, for several months, to the point that we talked about, like
lost
going
that
to a
consistency.
behavioral therapist or a counselor or something, because just the amount of anger that we were seeing in him was very concerning. Just almost scary. Like we just weren't really sure how to help him or support him or address that. Mm-hmm. And it did finally kind of resolve on its own.
I think it was once he started school and like we got that aspect
that was part of
so.
it. But I think too, just like once he kind of learned that like just because things were chaotic, it still was okay. We still were coming home. You know what I mean? Like he didn't really understand like Kenzie could die. He just understood that like our life was constantly chaotic and stressful and unpredictable.
Right. But
and it was frustrating for him.
Definitely. And but he's now in a much better spot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Way
Once, we kind of recognized and understood where that was coming from, I think a lot of that started to subside, but it was definitely something for a while that we really struggled with mm-hmm. him.
Yeah.
And then, like Adri, for the most part, has always kind of taken it in stride. I think about like when Kenzie's hair really started to fall out, she had like this one spot on the back of her head where she had like no hair, and then the rest of it was like shoulder length.
So that day, I don't know if we should explain it now, but that day was a perfect day to do it because it was like we had just gone out for family photos, and then like
I'm talking about their haircut first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the day she lost her hair, that was rough too. But so there was just like this spot where she had no hair, and I was like, we've got to get some sort of haircut because this situation's looking a little whack. And So Adri had never wanted to cut her hair. She's going to be Rapunzel. She's going to have hair that was the longest hair in the whole wide world. And now in pictures, you will see she has very long hair again. But she decided she wanted to get her hair cut. So she would have been like 6, maybe 7. But she decided she wanted to get her hair cut and see if we could make it into a wig for Kenzie, because she understood that Kenzie's hair was all going to fall out. That was something that we talked about early on, because we knew it was something that was going to be an issue for Adri, because her hair is, one of the most important things in the world to her, even though she runs around with it like a rat's nest every day, because it's, I don't know, we have an issue with the brushing of the hair in our house. Please send help if you have good solutions for that. But, so we knew that that was going to be an issue. And so we had already talked about that. And so when I started talking about Kenzie getting her hair cut, she decided she wanted to get her hair cut too, to see if we could have it made into a wig for Kenzie, which never did end up happening. But that, we did end up donating it, but it wasn't made into a wig for Kenzie specifically, because for a 2-year-old, that's just not really practical. Anyway, so we get there and we're talking. Kenzie gets her hair cut first. And Adri thought she was getting her head shaved. Like, Adri fully intended to have no hair so that a wig could be made for Kenzie. And I totally cried about that one too. That, Adri was so concerned for her little baby sister, that she was willing to, give up her most prized possession for Kenzie. And so that was pretty cool. She did end up getting a haircut. She did not shave her head. That was a very cute haircut. But so there's a lot of things I think that like siblings have thoughts about, but they don't fully understand or even think to ask sometimes. And so it's important that you do your best to really be open with them and encourage them to ask questions and give them frequent opportunities to ask questions or to talk openly. Because you never really know, you think you had a conversation, but you never really know like what's actually, going on. And, so that one was, kind of one of the more lighthearted, funny examples of, like a sibling emotion situation. But go ahead.
I was going to share the more, probably emotional side one, where it was just that I think we had lost a puppy from one of the moms that had their babies.
Had puppies,
and Adri, I don't know, for some reason, locked in on that.
Yeah.
And then Kenzie was also going through like high doses at the moment. And I think she came into our room like 3 or 4 times. And it was just like, Kenzie's just sleeping, Mom. I checked. She's not dead. And it was like, and that was hard to get. I mean, even now I'm going to get emotional about it, because it was like, oh my goodness. Like, you don't want your 7-year-old to be checking on your 3-year-old to see if she's still alive. I get it. And I'm glad that she
has that compassion,
wanted to check on her, but it was still a bizarre thing to see her trying to be helpful in that way.
And it was worried about, like, it was evident.
And know that her little mind was thinking that this,
like, any day Kenzie might not wake up or whatever.
Right. Like the puppy that didn't wake up. So, it was just like, oh gosh, I don't want her to have to deal with that. And hopefully, I don't know, that's, easily processed for her and not something that will come back later. But, hopefully it's...
And it is, like, you don't know what other kids are saying. So, like, one day she came home from her little, co-op thing and was like, my friend said her grandma died of cancer. Like, is Kenzie going to die? So, like, we've had lots of conversations about that. So that sometimes is, an issue. And again, like, you don't really know, like, when Adri went through that phase, she wasn't really asking questions like, is Kenzie going to die? But then it was evident that, like, it was something that was constantly on her mind for a while of like, I checked and Kenzie is still breathing, or like whatever. Yeah. That was weird to, I don't know, be a part of that conversation. Yeah. And just kind of like, honey, like if, like, I remember having a conversation with her and saying like, Adri, cancer is something that sometimes people die from. Kenzie's been doing very well and we think she's going to continue to do well. But if Kenzie starts to get more sick and the medicine isn't helping her, more than likely we would be in the hospital for a long time and we would know that she was probably going to die. And we would have you guys come to the hospital and tell her goodbye and that you love her and that. So it wouldn't usually be a surprise that she would die. So you don't have to worry about checking on her while she's sleeping. Like, you know, she's doing pretty well right now. And so she probably, you know, is going to be just fine. So that's not something that you need to worry about. But that was a really, you know, like not a fun conversation to have. And not a fun realization to recognize that was, you know, her fear at that time.
Yeah.
You know, and kids, I mean, it's a very common experience for siblings to go through all sorts of emotions like that, whether it's fear and anxiety or anger or feelings of, you know, lack of attention, or jealousy. You know, I had Sai say a couple times like, man, I wish I had cancer so I could, you know, eat Chipotle every day, or like just whatever. Like, I wish I could, you know, have cancer so I could lay in bed when I say I don't feel well. And, you know, and so again, like all of our kids are little, you know, but it is something that, you know, we've had to have conversations about that too.
Right. They're watching, they're observing, they're seeing what Kenzie's doing and what they're doing and trying to make sense of it all. And, you know, the one thing they know that stands out for Kenzie is that she has cancer. And so it's like, well, she didn't have to help clean or do this or that or get in trouble for XYZ. So why do I have to be the one that upholds this too? So it sounds like they're awake.
Uh-oh. Anyway, do you have anything else last minute you want to add?
I don't think so. So
our intruder, the person of the hour.
Good morning, chickadee.
How are you? Looks like you're playing with Play-Doh. You want to say hi to everybody?
She just likes to hear her own voice. All right, we'll do some
you want to serenade us? Can you sing us a song? No?
Let it go. It's almost time to start singing that again. All right. Thanks. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this with those that need to have a good cry out, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.